You're listening to
and such a short amount of time to do it in.
a Mamma Mia podcast.
And there is a positive side to it. Like, we have Ruby, the massive bleed she had on the brain. We could have had a Ruby that was a lot more compromised than she currently is. And we are very lucky that we have a Ruby that is an incredibly positive and strong and determined individual.
Hi, I'm Mia Friedman, and welcome to a special episode of No Filter. Today, we bring you a story I wish never had to be told. It's about a family who experienced an unimaginable tragedy, the kind that changes you forever. And now another tragedy struck them just when they were adjusting to their new normal. 6 years ago, Ben Heuston had just arrived in London on a business trip when he received a phone call from home. His wife Chloe and her father Nick Waterlow had been stabbed to death in their Sydney home. Ben and Chloe's 3 young children, Will 4, Ruby 3 and James just 4 months, were in the house at the time. Ruby was injured in the attack and was hospitalised. In a matter of moments, the Heuston Waterlow family was blown apart. Their community and Ben's family rallied round him and the kids, and slowly, their lives returned to something resembling normal. As normal as it could ever be, without Chloe at its heart. But now, their world has shifted again. Just before her 9th birthday, Ruby Heuston became unwell. She was admitted to hospital, and within 24 hours, she was diagnosed with an incredibly aggressive and rare form of leukemia. Almost immediately, she suffered a cerebral haemorrhage, and her family were told to come and say goodbye. Miraculously, Ruby survived. She spent a month in intensive care, learning to walk and talk again, and she spent 114 days in hospital. She'll be in and out of hospital until 2018, when her chemotherapy for her leukemia will hopefully finally be completed. Meanwhile, Ruby's been left permanently blind by the cerebral haemorrhage, and she's now home and learning how to live in a world without her sight. Her father Ben has a new mountain to climb. Ben and his sister Penny Heuston, who's been incredibly involved in the care of all 3 of their children since Chloe died, join me now in the studio. Ben and Penny, welcome.
Hi.
Morning, Mia.
I'm so sorry we have to be here. Ben, we've never met before, and I never met Chloe, but we had connections, we knew people in common, and I was one of many people who were profoundly affected by what happened to your family. Before we talk about Ruby, I want you to tell me a bit about Chloe, because I'm sorry I never met her. She sounded like a firecracker.
Oh, yeah, she's a wonderful woman, and she's a great mum. It's terribly sad what happened. It's now been a little while ago, and we're trying to sort of move on with things. But, yeah, she was, I think at the time at the funeral, I sort of put it as well as I could, which was, thought she was a really inspirational woman, and she was very kind. She was a great friend, and I think that's kind of the spirit of her is sort of lives on in my daughter. I suppose that's sort of the best way to think about it. Some of the really nice aspects of her personality, sort of her warmth, her generosity, her her sort of giving nature, all that sort of stuff is what you'd find if you spoke to Ruby. So yeah.
Chloe was bigger than life, as we've been saying, and just loved people and was 100% extrovert. And I must say, Ruby is the same. I have often been joking with her as we've been trying to keep her entertained with lots of visitors that, would you like me to grab somebody off the street and come and talk to you? Yeah, that'd be fine. So she just loves talking to anybody and just loves people, which will actually hold her in really good stead going forward, that she's a great communicator, just like her mother was.
Ruby sounds extraordinary, and Chloe sounds like she also was extraordinary. She was a producer at Triple J. She worked in radio.
Yeah, so she did a few different things, had a few different hats. She actually won a Walkley Award for being a journalist. So she did a really nice campaign about disability called Don't Diss My Ability.
Wow, that was her.
That was her gig, so that was her. She was a big part of that. I don't know whether she won a Walkley for that or not. She helped to organise that. She organised the actual event working at the ABC, She was the producer on Triple J Mornings with Adam Spencer, and she also was the producer when Angela Turns was doing quite well on ABC Breakfast, and then she moved over to ABC TV, and when she was on ABC TV, she was marketing there and did. She actually ended up writing a cookbook, which was a really interesting thing, which was about basically it was famous people's sort of special recipes, but the story behind that recipe. So it was the idea of, I think it was Pat Rafter cooked his wife prawn linguine as a way of wooing her, and she wrote that book together with another fellow from ABC. So she had, she's a really talented individual, and she had a quite a varied kind of career, but sort of in this space, which is probably why there's some sort of overlap. So she did. She was a little bit of a reporter, but she was mainly behind the scenes, producer first, and then she was mainly in marketing, and then she's going to be a teacher, which is what she was doing when she got killed. So
I understand this is just hard and awful, and again, I wish I didn't even have to ask you about it, but I kind of wanted to ask you about after. It's interesting, when we've talked before, Ben, you say that she was killed. So, there are sort of euphemisms when we lost her or when she passed away, but you're quite upfront about saying how she died and what happened to her. And I wanted to ask you about how you got on with your life after that, in terms of how you got up every day and looked after 3 grieving children. And if this is too hard for you to answer, Penny, you can jump in at any time, when you were grieving yourself.
Oh, well, I mean, you don't really have a lot of choice, do you? So, I mean, I was talking about this with Penny in the car on the way over. What's the choice you have? You've got to move on and move forwards. We're from a family where there's sort of a fair bit of, I don't know, we were talking about whether resilience is a terrible word to use, but, I think, in the place where I sort of come from and family I've been in, you just got to get on with things and move forwards. What choice do I really have? You got to be, if you think negatively about life, it's going to be a pretty sad experience you've got going forwards. But, you can find joy in things, and we've found lots of joy. I mean, not lots of joy talking about what just happened, but, in general, we have a really nice life. My kids are happy, generally speaking. I've got great family, and I've got really, really good friends who've been supporting us. Some people did some incredible things to really make stuff move and to allow us to live sort of get back to a normal-ish kind of life, as much as normal is, because this stuff never stops. But
what did people do? Like just the practicalities? Because James was only 4 months old, Will was 5, and Ruby was 2. How do you and you had to work. I mean, you've got to support your family. So what were the practicalities of looking after 3 small children?
So just after Chloe died, of course, James was still being breastfed by Chloe. So we have a terrific aunt, Bridget, who more or less stepped in and took baby James and looked after him. So we kind of decamped down to my parents' place at near Yass, where my aunt is as well. And so she had the baby, and thank God, because we just didn't have the capacity to get up and feed the baby all night and all that kind of stuff, and he'd be around all day and whatever. But it was just all about mucking in and making sure that the kids were okay and keeping them occupied. It was the school holidays. It was like over Christmas time or whatever. And what's the saying that you can judge yourself by your friends? Well, Chloe's friends have been unbelievable. I actually call them the Chloe Mafia, and they have just, they've been sensational for the last 6 years.
I've met a few of them. They're fierce bunch of women.
They are. So, be careful if you ever say you want to be a godmother to somebody, because it's not just, a nice lunch at the christening or whatever. They have really stepped up, those girls, and have been just terrific in their support of taking the kids whenever we'd needed them, jumping in at the last minute, making a big fuss on Chloe's birthday every year. All the godmothers come around and tell stories about Chloe. So it's all about, a lot of it's really keeping Chloe's memory alive, and lots of stories about their mother and whatever. So she's will never be forgotten.
She's very present in their lives.
She is very present in their lives.
She's in our heart, and it's a part of our experience, I suppose, and probably okay now to move on to talk about what's happened to Ruby, which is really sad,
So tell me how this started. Ruby was 8 years old?
Yeah, it was just before her 9th birthday, and So unfortunately, everyone in the family got sick with gastro, and we couldn't really see it. And so she was ill, and she walked into hospital one night, and as soon as she walked into hospital, they had an idea that something was wrong, and then it just got worse from there. So she had a terribly, cancer comes in different forms. I didn't realise this, and she had almost the most aggressive type of leukemia you can have. The genetic assay or the genetic way of looking at it said it was super radical. But she walked in one night and she woke up and she was blind, and then she was basically going to die. So it was very, very close. The family came down. We basically thought she was going to die because the hospital told us she was going to die. But she didn't, which was cool.
They told you that?
Well, they told us to get ready for it. They'll never say someone's going to die. They're going to say, look, there's a good chance this will happen, and that's what they said. And at that point, I rang my family, and everybody was there to come down. So to drive down and see her, the kids had to see her before there was not a chance to see her again. But she pulled through, which was
Ben, over what period
good.
of time did this happen? From everyone having gastro and going into the hospital.
So the symptoms of Ruby's leukemia, ALL, are tiredness, headaches, bruising, and vomiting. And so the whole school had vomiting. Yeah. She'd had some headaches 2 weeks prior, or so. There was nothing. There's no big alarm bells that go to say there's something really wrong with this child. She had quite a few bruises, which she's very sporty, and they fall over at netball. They've always got bruises and that kind of stuff. So, but my aunt eventually said, I just think something's not quite right. And so Ben took her in on the Thursday night, and then we got the phone call the next night to go and say goodbye because they didn't think she was going to make it. So it was one day time frame. It was unbelievably quick.
I can't even begin to process that. I can't imagine how your family even did.
You can't process it. You can't even process it. Well, I couldn't even process it sitting there, that it was just a surreal situation.
Was there a bit of not fair?
Oh, you can't. You don't.
You said that to me yesterday, Ben, when I said, was there that? And you said, well, you can't think like that.
I think there's two things that go on then is, unfortunately I've gone through a couple of things that aren't fun, but when you're in real stress...
That's the understatement of the year, Ben.
Yeah, well, I think when you're really acutely in a bad place, you don't have time to process anything, you just deal with it, and you're in shock. You don't feel much. When somebody dies or somebody is really ill, you're kind of just in shock, you don't feel things. And so that first period of time, you're literally just in that very present moment, and you just do it. And then, and then over time that sort of changes. But, you were asking me about what was happening in that moment. And then, the not fair stuff is you have a time to think about that later. And I just think, in terms of life, you can't... If you think like that and things have not worked well for you, then, you're going to be a sad individual. And I think, whether it's a really big tragedy or just somebody's normal life, there's always things that don't go well, and it's not necessarily what happens, it's kind of how you deal with it. So it's how you think about it, and you just got to, you got to be kind of positive. Otherwise it's you end up having a sad situation. I suppose I was talking to a friend the other day, and she said, she said, we're just talking about exactly this sort of thing, and she said, you don't tend to be too negative, Ben, you're pretty positive. And I said, yeah. And she said, well, look, some people are still holding on to the fact that their mum doesn't love, didn't favour them as a child 20 years ago, and they haven't moved on. So,
That's
look,
so true.
It's...
So is it a bit harden up? Well, you must want to say to those people, harden up.
Oh, well, I don't. Look, everyone lives their own journey, right? People do their own thing, and it's up to them. It's not for me to kind of call whether they should harden up. I just, I live my life. It's a pretty, we try to keep it pretty tight because we've got enough stuff going on, and, people can do what they like, and we'll do what we like,
I guess that's resilience, isn't it, Penny? That ability to keep getting up. Yeah. I suppose, and also when you're a parent, as Ben says, what choice do you have? It's not like you can lie down on the ground and go, well, no, this is too hard. Because Ruby needed him, and James and Will needed him.
And there is a positive side to it. Like, we have Ruby, and the massive bleed she had on the brain, we could have had a Ruby that was a lot more compromised than she currently is. And
so that
we are we are very lucky that we have a Ruby that is an incredibly positive and strong and determined individual. Mum told me that one of the teachers at the hospital school said she was the bravest girl they'd ever met. And I'd say they've met quite a few brave people.
Kids. Yeah, I thought that was pretty amazing. Because, look,
that's a high bar.
Yeah, there's a lot of kids going through a lot of hard stuff. It's not just my daughter. If they say that, obviously she's doing all right,
So she lost her sight during that time in hospital, and that's irreversible.
Yep.
How do you explain that to her?
Well, I think you just got to be upfront with stuff. There's no sugarcoating it. It's like when a mum got killed. You can't say that she's coming back because she's not coming back. She's died, And then equally, the sight is probably not coming back. I mean, her retina's been shredded, so it's unlikely that she'll ever see again. I mean, there's a very faint hope of some operation in the future, and we always hope that there's things like bionic eyes and things in the future, but that's not the answer we've been given. So the answer at the moment is, well, look, you don't have any sight, and so we sort of spoke about that with her from the beginning. She likes to be called low vision. She's worse than legally blind. There's a bar that's legal blindness. She's actually less than that. But there's two things, I suppose. One is you've got to be upfront, and because if you lie or you sugarcoat something, it doesn't work over time. It doesn't help anyone. And I think the second is she's just a really good, strong, vibrant girl, and she's not a girl that's kind of just throw the towel in. She's not going to give up, and she's kind of adapting as best she can, and we spoke before yesterday. People have some really great lives who are blind. People. Naz Campanella's a newsreader on ABC, Triple J and ABC, and as I've sort of said to her, she can do everything else except drive a car. So we're hoping self-driving cars come through, but she can.
By the time
have a
she
job.
starts, she gets older for sure.
She can have a lot. She can have love. She can have a job. She can have relationships. All those sort of things. There's a few things she won't be able to do, and but in the scheme of things, she can have a quality life. And that's what we hope for her.
She's keen to go to the Paralympics and run for Australia. She's a very good runner, a very good little sports girl.
On the website, Rides for Ruby Rose on the You Caring fundraising platform, I was looking at some of the photos, and she's a hurdler. She was horse riding, a bunch of different stuff. So netball, she was clearly very active.
Very good at netball.
How is she just processing it like day to day, one step at a time? Because she was in hospital for a long time, wasn't she? And she couldn't walk.
She was in hospital. We were there for 114 days the first time, and one of us had to be there with her every night. And she had to learn to walk again. She couldn't talk when she first woke up. There was only odd words. Just even daily chores like showering and toileting. She couldn't do any of that. So
she had to learn everything again.
So to be where she is in the space of 5 months is totally amazing. I was with her at physio yesterday, and she was on the treadmill, and she actually jogged a few steps. I also was on the treadmill next to her, nearly dying. The physio made me do all the exercises as well.
Penny, what about your life? Like, how you say someone had to be with her for 114 nights. Ben's got the boys at home. You presumably have a life somewhere. You don't just appear out of the sky.
It's kind of on hold at the moment. So I live at Warren, west of Dubbo, and I'm spending 50% of my time here. So
have you got kids?
No.
Right.
I've got far too many horses. But
I was going to say, you've got your hands more than full.
So I mean, this is probably the most important thing, is to get Ruby well and get her on the right track. I've spent a lot of time with the kids since their mother died. Like, come down every month and help look after them. So I may not have kids, but they're very close to those kids, and Ruby and I have got a pretty special bond. So she spent 5 months in hospital, but now she's home. She spent 114 days, 114 days. 3.5 months, and we've had a few other hospital stints. And that. She has to have chemo. She's still having chemo? Yep. So the chemo will go for 2 years. She's in the middle of some pretty heavy-duty stuff at the moment, but she's going really well. What are the effects of that? For most kids, it's tiredness and vomiting, but as long she just likes to be active as much as she can. So, she's going. She's doing really well with her chemo and physio. And even this morning, she said, "I just want to get back to physio because I just want to get better quicker." You said that she'd been to school for a few hours and spent some time at school. How's that? Well,
I think it's great. She was going to hospital school before, and now she's going to her normal school, like the school she was at before. And I think it's great. It's great for two reasons. I mean, she does a little bit of learning, but really it's about being in a community and connected with her friends. So the good thing, you sort of talked about friends and family and kind of the people supporting. One of the women has organised every Friday a pizza night. So as soon as she could get out of hospital, in fact, even in hospital, there's 2 or 3 girls come over every Friday night. They sing or they watch a movie or whatever, karaoke, YouTube clips, and then they just hang out and eat pizza. And it keeps her close to her friends, and going to school for an hour a day is kind of a similar thing. You know, she's not going to be learning a heap, but it's really good for her, and it's keeping her in a community. So.
Who's been your support over these past years, Ben?
Well, basically...
Because you seem like a very private person. It seems like that part of it, having your life open and having to accept help from strangers, would probably have been a challenge for you. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, just want to keep my life pretty private. Lots of people are the same, and I think that's super unusual. I mean, there's friends and family, and they come in different forms. So, probably from the people who have helped the most have been my sister, my auntie, and my mum. And they've been, as Penny said, they just come down. It's varied a bit, but there's someone in the house most of the time. There used to be someone in the house before she even got sick, sort of half the time or a quarter of the time, and now there's someone there pretty much nearly all the time. And in fact, when Ruby was quite sick, we had 22 hours a day of someone in hospital and then someone with the kids as well all the time for 114 days. So that's largely, a lot of it's driven by the immediate family, and then there's friends, and there's a roster of friends. We run a Google spreadsheet because it's so complex of the number of people that come in and out. There's 9 godmothers. There's there's women from school. There's people making lunches or making meals, cooking,
taking the ironing,
all this sort of stuff.
It's a finely tuned machine, which we are just so lucky to be blessed by such a lovely community. And for me, family isn't always about blood. So, like I mentioned, the Chloe Mafia are just, I didn't think anything good could come out of Chloe dying, but I've just, been blessed to have all these wonderful new friends that were part of Chloe's life.
And tell me about the fundraising. What's that for?
Okay, so the fundraising is currently Ruby needs a carer. In light of the fact that there's no mother there to help, she needs a full-time carer. So we're just trying to raise funds for the full-time carer because obviously Ben has to work. So and that carer will be helping with her rehab. When we were in the hospital, we got told we had to get a permanent person, so there was continuity with her rehab and learning and just everyday functioning. So
for a while it wasn't going so well. So she wasn't rehabbing very fast, and they basically sat us down, the 11 or 13 doctors they had at the time. So some insane number of people, and they just sort of had the real talk. Well, you can do it ad hoc with all these different people, kind of being well-intentioned amateurs, and she might rehab in a year, or you can bite the bullet and get the same person consistent every single day. And so we've got that carer, and the carers currently run about $1,000 a week. So so that's why.
Have you found someone who's great?
Oh, we've got a great person at the moment. She's awesome. This Kiwi woman called Kathy, and she's just an inspirational lady. She's done some really great stuff, and she's doing really good work with Ruby. These people need to be paid, and they're relatively expensive. So that's sort of the sort of principal drive with this. And if things go super duper well, there was something that we might come to talk about where we would like to help some other blind kids, and we can talk about that either now or later.
No, tell me about that.
Okay, so Vision Australia put us onto this technique called echolocation, and it's insane. You can't understand it, but there's this Catalyst show a couple of weeks ago, and there's this guy called Daniel Kish, who's from the US blind guy. And so what he's done is he's taught himself to click and retrained his brain so that it acts like a sonar. So this guy literally walks down the street, he's completely blind without a cane, and he's clicking and he's saying, car to my left, tree to my right, low fence, high fence, overhanging tree. And they even had this guy, so two things that you just couldn't understand if you know how blind people work. So one is he's on a bike. He's on a bike, riding a bike and clicking his way around a street. That's just insane. And then the other was he taught this technique came to Australia earlier in the year and taught this technique to some kids. And there's this boy, probably comparable age to Ruby. He's 200 feet away in an open field, a completely open field, and he's clicking his way towards a building. and he's just click, click, click. They call it power clicking, and he's making this noise with his mouth, and then he's hearing it, and he's working out the distance between the two, and he's walking in an open field and navigating in an open field towards this building. And so, the primary focus of the fundraising is make sure we can afford for Ruby to get rehab properly. But I've had some discussions with Vision Australia, and there's a group that's sort of taking forward Daniel Kish's work, and it's called World Institute for the Blind. Julianne Bell is sort of running that bit. And what I'm trying to do is if we can raise enough money, is to part fund that echolocation technique so that not just one kid can learn from it. And Vision Australia's already doing this stuff, right? But it's just how can we make that happen? Can we pay for somebody to fly from an expert in it to train other people? Next year when Daniel comes, do we part fund that if we can? If we raise enough money, and that's the kind of thinking with that. It's not a guarantee, and it kind of depends a lot on how much we raise. But if that worked well, this has transformed people's lives. You cannot understand it. Like, you should watch the YouTube videos or look at that Catalyst show, and it'd make anybody cry. It's so inspirational. These people's lives have been transformed, because obviously when you're blind you don't know where you are at all. You've just got no idea. And these people can navigate their way around a world that gives them a degree of freedom you just can't understand. So if we can do something around that, that'd be really, really exciting. It sort of depends a bit on how things go. But at the very least, already talking about it with Vision Australia about doing a workshop in the next school holidays. So it's not just Ruby who can benefit, but it's also a bunch of other kids. I mean, enough other people. If there's adults that want to do it, then cool. And it's just sort of this new technique is just coming through, if you like, into the skill set of the tool bag of people who are blind. So if there's a way that we can help people who are truly blind, because you've really got to have almost no vision for this stuff to work, then that'd be a benefit, as well as Ruby getting rehabbed, right?
Yep, so Ruby started with the echolocation. So Vision Australia were over yesterday and we were doing some of it. And it's just amazing. She can walk down the hallway and tell where there's an open door, even just the shut door, because the shut door sounds different to the wall. You just can't, until you see it. It's just amazing.
So her sense of hearing, I imagine when you lose your sight particularly, suddenly becomes incredibly heightened.
Unbelievable. Nearly the day after, like, as soon as she could communicate with us fully, she'd be going, oh, somebody's singing. And you're going, oh, there's someone singing. And a sense of smell. You walk down the street and you went, oh, that's the chicken shop. So she went, oh, there's another Subway. It's like she can smell. It's amazing how quickly your other senses kick in. And is the idea to keep her at her regular school? Is she able to stay without sight at a regular school, or is that something for down the track to
No.
about?
That's we've looked at that, and the schools. She happens to be in a Catholic school, and the Catholic school system has been supportive. Kids are kept in school. They're just going to support them, and part of that they can manage within the system. So she'll get a certain amount of care, and some of that in the future we might have to supplement with. So what she's going to have to do is to learn Braille. Start using adaptive technologies. So it's amazing what an iPod or an iPad can do these days in terms of, some of the advice we've been given by Vision Australia and others is really great, and from Catholic Ed and even from the Department of Ed, because the hospital schools is a Department of Ed school, and they've been working really well in terms of the sort of laying off the education. In the future, the choice of which school she goes to for high school is going to be the one where the vision support is the best, because that's the thing that'll make the biggest difference. No, so she'll stay there. That's where her community is. That's where her friends are. It's where she'll, where she'll be the happiest. And they've been really good. The principal at the school, Hillary, has been awesome to date. And within the way that the system has to work, and Catholics is a big system, just like the state school's a big system. They've been really supportive. And so, I suppose the plan is she stays there. She's in year 4 now, so she's got a couple more years. We'll work out what that means for her going into a choice of high school, and then we might need to bite the bullet a bit on what we do there, because it's got to be the right school that has the most help for people who have a special need, because it's a pretty special kind of need.
Is she likely to be able to go to guide dog?
Yeah, but not till she's 15. And her Jumbo, her little brother's pretty excited about that.
I was going to say.
Yeah. Yeah, no. So she's got to wait a while, and they've got to be able to navigate and
Yeah.
and do all that kind of stuff before they get a guide dog.
So it's something to look forward to.
But yeah, Ruby
Finally,
thought,
a dog in a family.
Yeah. Ruby thought a guide dog wasn't ever allowed to play, but we were reading her a book, and the book said as soon as you take the harness off, it's a normal dog, and she was so excited that she'd have a dog to play with.
How are the boys?
The boys have been remarkable.
How old are they now? Is Will's 10, 11?
He's 10 and James is 6. But just little things like seeing Will shut cupboard doors so Ruby doesn't walk into them, and and James, when she first got home, was very proud of himself that he could bring her from the bedroom down to the lounge room on his arm, and they really have been.
They're kind kids. They're nice boys.
Really nice boys.
Yeah,
So.
they
Both of them
must
are
be
nice.
very protective of her.
Yeah, they're good. They're nice, but both of them are just genuinely nice kids, and the older boy, particularly she and her
Thick as
sister
thieves,
are very
those two.
tight. And so he's just a thoughtful, kind boy. We were in the in the parent teacher, and the first thing they said is what a nice boy he is. So
Yeah.
That's the most important thing. I mean,
Making their mum proud.
yeah, it's more important that they're a good person than they're the top of the class or the best at sport or whatever. So
Ben and Penny, I realise this must be really hard for you, so thank you. Ben, you're an amazing father. Penny, you're an amazing aunt. You're both extraordinary people, and those kids are an absolute shining credit to you. I can't wait to see Ruby kicking ass through her life. That's clearly going to happen.
She will.
I can just
She's
tell.
A determined young lady that will go very, very far. I'd
Yeah.
say.
And so, now it's time for everybody to help her do that and to help you. So Rise for Ruby Rose at the You Caring site. We'll have lots of links on Mamamia and in the notes for this podcast. Ben and Penny, thank you so much.
Thank you, Mia.
Thank you, Mia.
very much
Bye.
for all your support.
Thank you.
They're an extraordinary family with an extraordinary little girl, but they need some help. If you would like to join the Chloe Mafia from wherever you are, to help Ruby with her schooling, to navigate the family home, to do the everyday things that other 9-year-olds can do and support this family, you can. A fundraising page called Rise for Ruby Rose has been set up on the You Caring fundraising site. You can find it by Googling Rise for Ruby Rose, You Caring, and check the show notes in this podcast. Thanks for listening to No Filter. For more interviews with depth, subscribe to the show in iTunes or listen through the Mamamia podcast app. That's free, just find it in your app store. If you have a suggestion for a guest, someone you'd like to hear me interview on No Filter, email us nofilter@mamamia.com.au. And for more information about our other podcasts on the Mamamia Podcast Network, go to the Mamamia Podcast Network Facebook page or my Facebook page, Mia Friedman. This podcast was produced by Eliza Ratliff and hosted by me, Mia Friedman. Catch you next time.